The Forgotten Relic. The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly before Captain Zyra as she guided her sleek, silver ship through the wreckage of an ancient battlefield. Broken hulls of long-forgotten warships floated silently, their once mighty structures now reduced to drifting metal and shattered glass. This place was nothing but a graveyard, a relic of a war fought centuries ago, a war where humanity had been wiped out. Zyra belonged to the Zarkith Empire, a race that had long dominated the galaxy. She was a skilled explorer, tasked with scanning abandoned battlegrounds for any technology that could still be useful. But in truth, she found these missions dull. Humans were gone, their legacy reduced to scraps and dust. Their technology was outdated, primitive compared to the advancements of her people. Her violet eyes flickered across the control panel as her ship's scanners worked through the debris. Nothing but rusted metal, shattered weapons, and dead ships, she sighed. Another pointless trick, she muttered. Then, a faint ping echoed through the cockpit. She sat up straight. The scanner had picked up something, a large structure ahead. As she approached, a colossal battleship emerged from the darkness. It was ancient, its surface covered in scars from old battles. Its hull was blackened, its engines silent. Large human letters were etched into its side, barely visible through the layers of dust and damage. U.S. Vindicator, she read aloud, her lips curling into a smirk. She had heard of this name before. A legendary human warship, rumored to be one of the deadliest in their fleet, but it had been missing for over 500 years. Some historians even believed it was destroyed in the final war between humans and the Galactic Coalition. Yet, here it was, floating like a ghost in space. Zyra scoffed. So this is the great human relic. She laughed, shaking her head. Pathetic. Just another dead ship. She tapped a few buttons on her console, sending out a scanning pulse. There was no power, no life signatures. It was nothing more than a lifeless husk. Still, she was curious. Why had this ship survived when so many others had been destroyed? Why had no one found it before? She moved her ship closer, letting the scanner do a deep analysis. Her screen flickered, and suddenly, something changed. A low hum vibrated through the air. Zyra's heart skipped a beat. On the screen, power levels spiked. The relic was waking up. A deep mechanical growl echoed through her speakers, as if something ancient had just taken its first breath after centuries of sleep. Faint blue lights flickered across the battleship's hull. Its engines, dead for hundreds of years, let out a low rumbling noise. Zyra's fingers hovered over the controls, unsure whether to pull back or investigate further. How was this possible? No ship should be able to come back online after so many years in deep space. Suddenly, her ship's alarm blared. Warning. Energy surge detected. A surge of electricity pulsed through the air, causing her cockpit lights to flicker. She gritted her teeth as static filled her ears. Then, a robotic voice, deep and powerful, echoed through her speakers. Solestiums, Rariaxitaid. Ating. Zyra's blood ran cold. Impossible, she whispered. She yanked her ship's controls, trying to reverse away from the U.S. Vindicator, but her ship jerked violently, locked in place. A powerful gravitational field had formed around the ancient battleship, pulling everything toward it. Let me go, she hissed, slamming buttons and activating her thrusters. But the relic had other plans. Suddenly, the Vindicator's massive gun turrets creaked, their rusted joints groaning as they began to turn. They were aiming at her. A cold fear settled in her chest. This was no dead ship. It was a sleeping giant. And now, it was awake, awakening the beast. A deep mechanical growl echoed through the darkness, vibrating through the empty battlefield. The once dead U.S. Vindicator, a relic of a forgotten war, was waking up. Captain Zyra's fingers danced across her ship's controls, her violet eyes darting between warning lights flashing on her screen. Every instinct in her body screamed for her to flee, but she was trapped. A powerful gravitational field had locked her in place. No, 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 this is not possible, she muttered, slamming her controls. The Vindicator's massive hull shuddered as power surged through its ancient systems. Faint blue lights flickered across its surface, illuminating old battle scars and burn marks. What should have been a dead relic had suddenly come alive, like some ancient beast rising from its tomb. Then it spoke. System reactivation complete. The voice was deep, cold, and filled with something almost alive. An artificial intelligence that had slept for centuries, now awake once more. Zyra's ship trembled as a new alert blared across her cockpit. Warning. Unknown energy signature DTKTE. Her breath hitched. The readings on her screen shouldn't even exist. The energy coming from the Vindicator was beyond anything the Zarketh Empire had ever recorded. She tried to activate her ship's engines, but the thrusters sputtered uselessly. The gravitational force was too strong. She was being pulled in. Her heart pounded as she watched the U.S. Vindicator's rusted, ancient turrets creak to life. They were massive, designed to obliterate entire warships in a single blast. Slowly, they turned towards her, aimed directly at her ship. Panic surged through her. No, I am not dying because of some ancient broken machine. She jammed her fingers onto the emergency override, forcing every ounce of power into her thrusters. Her ship strained against the gravitational field, its metal frame groaning in protest. For a brief second, she thought she might escape. Then, a deep thrum vibrated through the battlefield. The U.S. Vindicator's weapons charge. Zyra's scanners went wild, detecting an energy signature so powerful it could tear her ship apart in an instant. She was out of time. Just as the turrets locked onto her, everything stopped. The hum of charging energy ceased. The lights on the Vindicator's surface dimmed. The gravitational field holding her ship weakened. For several long seconds, there was silence. Zyra's breathing was ragged, her hands still gripping the controls. What just happened? Then, her ship's communication system crackled to life. A voice, old, human, and filled with confusion, spoke through the static. Who is there? Zyra's eyes widened. That was not the AI. That was a human voice. The ghost in the machine. For a moment, Zyra could do nothing but stare at her communication screen. A human. Impossible. Humans had been extinct for over 500 years. Her hands trembled as she reached for the communication panel. She hesitated, then pressed the button. Identify yourself, she commanded, trying to keep her voice steady. A long pause. Then the voice spoke again. This is Commander Jack Ryder, captain of the U.S. Vindicator, requesting status update. Zyra's blood ran cold. Commander, Captain, was this person claiming to be from the past? She swallowed, her mind racing. This had to be a trick, a malfunctioning eye, or perhaps a recorded message repeating itself. Humans did not exist anymore. It was a fact. But before she could respond, something changed on her scanners. A biological signature appeared. One human life detected. Her heart pounded in her chest. This was not a recording. This was real. She activated her ship's external cameras and zoomed in on the U.S. Vindicator's command bridge. There, through the cracked glass of the old warship, she saw something impossible. A man. He was floating in a cryo chamber, his body frozen in time. His uniform was tattered, but she could still see the old Terran military insignia on his shoulder. His face was rugged, lined with scars, but his features were unmistakably human. And then, slowly, his eyes opened. Zyra's breath caught in her throat. She had just awakened the last human in the universe. The past awakens. The U.S. Vindicator's systems continued to flicker back to life. Inside, the once-forgotten AI Argus ran thousands of diagnostic checks. The warship had been asleep for centuries, locked in hibernation. But now, because of the alien intruder, it had been reactivated. And with it, so had its last surviving crew member. Inside the frozen depths of the ship, Commander Jack Ryder coughed violently, his body shaking as the cryo-fluid drained away. His mind was foggy, his limbs stiff. His last memory was of war, of humanity's final stand. And then, nothing. Now he was awake in a world that should not exist. As he struggled to focus, a blurry figure appeared outside the chamber. It was not human. For the first time in his life, Jack Ryder was looking at an alien. The warship's warning. Zyra's mind raced. This changed everything. If one human had survived, what else had humanity left behind? She reached for her ship's communicator again. "Commander Ryder," she said, keeping her voice level. "You are aboard a derelict warship from an extinct species. The war is over. Humanity is gone." The silence that followed was heavy. Then, Jack Ryder's voice came through, quiet but firm. "Extinct." A pause. "Then why is my warship still online?" Before Zyra could answer, her ship's alarms blared again. "New threat DDTCTE. Incoming ships." She whipped around to her controls. Her scanners picked up a Zarkith battle fleet entering the system. Her people were coming. And they would not want a human warship, especially one as dangerous as the U.S. Vindicator, falling into enemy hands. Zyra's stomach twisted. This situation had just gone from impossible to catastrophic. Jack Ryder, still weak, slowly gripped the console of his ship. His tired eyes flickered across the controls as his instincts kicked in. "If the war is over," he muttered, glancing at the incoming fleet, "then why are we still under attack?" Zyra had no answer. But one thing was clear. The last human warship had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Ghost of the past. A deep silence settled between Captain Zyra and the man who should not exist. Commander Jack Ryder. A name from a forgotten war. A soldier from a species long considered extinct. And yet he stood before her, alive. Zyra tightened her grip on her ship's controls, her mind racing. This was impossible. Humans had been wiped out centuries ago. There had been no survivors, no hidden colonies, no refugees. Their entire civilization had been erased from history. And yet, Jack Ryder was here. His warship was still operational. And worse, he was not alone. Zyra's ship's alarm blared again, flashing urgent red warnings across her screen. "Incoming hostile fleet. ZARK-88 warships. DKTCTE." Her breath caught. She turned toward her scanners. A fleet of Zarkith battle cruisers had entered the system. Their sleek black hulls cut through space, moving in perfect formation. These were not simple scouts. This was a kill squad. Zyra's blood ran cold. She recognized their insignia. The Imperial Cleanser Fleet. The very same fleet tasked with ensuring that no trace of humanity remained. They were here for the U.S. Vindicator. And if they realized that a human was still alive aboard that ship, Jack Ryder would be exterminated. The last soldier wakes. Inside the U.S. Vindicator, Jack Ryder's mind was still a haze. His body felt heavy, like lead, his muscles stiff from centuries of cryosleep. But the moment he saw the battle alerts flashing across his ship's monitors, his instincts kicked in. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know what year it was. But he knew an attack when he saw one. His fingers trembled as they hovered over the controls. His ship's AI, Argus, flickered to life, its deep synthetic voice calm and efficient. "Commander Ryder. System diagnostics, 72% operational. Weaponry, 45% capacity. Enemy vessels approaching. Recommended action. Engage or retreat." Jack blinked. Enemy vessels. His screen displayed an alien fleet closing in fast. Ships he did not recognize. Their design was sleek, advanced, far beyond anything humanity had faced during the war. His mind reeled. Who the hell were they? And then his gaze shifted to the other ship hovering nearby. A ship not human. His stomach twisted. Was he surrounded by hostiles? His grip tightened on the console. What the hell had he woken up into? A desperate stand. Back on her own ship, Zyra's heart pounded as her communicator buzzed with an incoming message from her fleet. Captain Zyra, this is Admiral Kell of the Imperial Cleanser Fleet. We have detected an unidentified energy surge from your coordinates. Confirm the source immediately. Her hands clenched. She had no choice. If she hesitated, they would suspect something was wrong. She pressed the transmission button. Admiral, I have located an old human relic, an abandoned battleship. It activated when I scanned it, but it appears to be non-hostile. There was a long silence. Then, Kell's voice returned, colder. We are boarding it. If there is any remaining human presence aboard, it will be eliminated. Zyra's breath caught. No. She knew what this meant. The Zarkith Empire had spent centuries ensuring that humanity never returned. If they discovered Jack Ryder, they wouldn't hesitate. They would execute him on sight. She turned her gaze back to the U.S. Vindicator, where she could see Jack, slowly regaining his strength, his fingers moving over his ship's controls. She had a choice. Let her people kill the last human, or betray everything she had ever known. Jack Ryder's warning. Jack's mind sharpened as he read the battle logs. The Vindicator's systems had been in deep sleep mode for over 500 years. But now, they were back online, and his ship's scanners told him everything he needed to know. Multiple enemy vessels detected. Weapons systems, damaged but operational. His gaze flickered to the external cameras, focusing on the alien woman in the nearby ship. He pressed the comms button. You, he growled. His voice was hoarse, rough from centuries of sleep. Who the hell are you? Zyra flinched. It was the first time she had ever heard a human speak. His voice was different, raw, strong. She hesitated for only a moment before replying. Captain Zyra of the Zarkith Empire. Jack's eyes darkened. Zarkith. He spat the word like venom. Your kind was part of the coalition. You're the ones who hunted us. Zyra's throat tightened. He wasn't wrong. The Zarkith had led the final extermination of humanity. Jack exhaled sharply. His head still spun from cryo-sleep, but his instincts were screaming at him. Tell me the truth, he said, his voice dangerously calm. What year is it? Zyra hesitated. The standard galactic year is 5193. Jack's body stiffened. 5 centuries. He swallowed hard, his fists clenching. Everyone he had ever known was gone. And now, there was an enemy fleet approaching. The rage that had fueled humanity's final stand ignited in his blood. He let out a slow breath, pressing a hand against the cold metal console of his warship. Then I guess I'm the last one left, he murmured. He turned his gaze to Zyra. And you brought the wolves to my doorstep. Zyra opened her mouth to argue, but she froze. A new message flashed across her screen. Imperial TLEANC order or ACIV. Destroy all remaining human presence. Her blood ran cold. They knew. Her fleet was arming weapons. And they weren't just coming for the Vindicator anymore. They were coming for her too. She had stayed too long. She had spoken too much. Now, they saw her as a traitor. Jack's voice cut through the silence. Tell me, Captain Zyra. His tone was low, lethal. Are you with them? Zyra stared at her fleet, at her people, at the warship that should have been dead, yet now burned with power once more. Her hands trembled. Then, slowly, she pressed a button on her ship's console. Her ship's targeting system locked onto her own fleet. She let out a shaky breath. Not anymore. Jack's lips curled into a grin. For the first time in centuries, humanity had an ally. And the galaxy was about to remember why they had feared the name humanity. The lost human. For the first time in over 5 centuries, The last human warship was awake. And now, war was coming to it. Captain Cyrus' ship hovered just outside the massive hull of the U.S. Vindicator, her screens flashing urgent warnings. Her own people, the Zarkith Empire's cleanser fleet, were preparing to eliminate every last trace of the ancient human war machine, including Jack Ryder. Zaira had spent her entire life believing that humans were long extinct, that they had been wiped from the stars like dust swept from a forgotten table. Yet here stood the last of them, a soldier of an empire that should not exist. And in a single moment, she had made her decision. She had turned against her own fleet. Jack Ryder's voice came through the communicator, rough and commanding. "They're not here for a friendly chat, are they?" Zaira swallowed hard, forcing herself to stay calm. "No, they're here to destroy you. And me." There was a pause. Then Jack let out a sharp breath, followed by something that sent a chill down Zaira's spine. A laugh. "Figures. Guess some things never change." The last Creo soldier. Inside the U.S. Vindicator, Jack moved through his warship like a ghost in a tomb. His boots clanked against the cold metal floor, his fingers tracing the consoles, feeling the familiar hum of the ship's heart coming back to life. The Creo sleep had left him weak, his muscles stiff, his head pounding, but he didn't have time to recover. The enemy was here. As he stepped onto the command bridge, the ship's AI, Argus, flickered into existence, a holographic projection of an old war system, its blue digital eyes scanning Jack with something eerily close to recognition. "Commander Ryder," it stated in a neutral tone. "Reactivation complete. Threat analysis initiated. Multiple hostile vessels detected. Battle recommendations: evade, engage, or surrender." Jack smirked, rolling his sore shoulders. "Yeah, surrender's not gonna happen." Argus processed for a moment before responding. "Acknowledged." Preparing for engagement, Jack took his seat in the command chair. It still fit him perfectly, even after all these centuries. His hands ran over the console, feeling the worn edges of controls that had once shaped the fate of humanity. Now, they would shape something else. He pressed a button, opening a direct channel to Zaira. "You said your people think humanity is dead." Zaira's voice came through, tense. "They do. Until now." Jack's smirk faded. "Then they can't be allowed to leave this system alive." A heavy silence filled the comm channel. Zaira's voice was uncertain when she finally spoke. You plan to fight them." Jack let out a slow breath, his mind already racing through battle formations, damage reports, and possible strategies. "I don't have a choice. They're coming to kill me. They're coming to kill you. And if they escape, they'll make sure the entire empire knows I'm alive." He leaned forward, his voice darkening. "That means we don't run. We don't hide. We finish this now." Zaira's pulse pounded in her ears. He's serious. A lone human. A half-broken warship. Against an entire Imperial fleet. This was madness. Yet, something about the way Jack spoke, the sheer certainty in his voice, made her wonder. Maybe madness was exactly what this moment needed. Inside the Vindicator, Jack knew he had seconds, maybe minutes before the enemy opened fire. The U.S. Vindicator's systems were still recovering. Weapons at 45% capacity, shields unstable, engines struggling. But that didn't mean they were defenseless. He turned to Argus. "I need a full combat assessment. What's still operational?" Argus responded immediately. "Primary kinetic weapons are offline. Torpedo launchers functional, but with limited ammunition. Pulse cannons at 37% efficiency. Energy shields at 19% and rising. Hyperspace drive. Unavailable." Jack clenched his jaw. No escape. That meant one thing. They had to stand and fight. He pressed the comms again. "Clara, I need you to do something for me." She hesitated. "What?" Jack's voice was steady. "You need to board my ship." Zaira blinked. "What?" I need a co-pilot. Someone who knows these new enemy ships, their tactics, their weaknesses. He paused. And well, my body still feels like it got run over by a war tank. Asterisk, asterisk. Syra's instincts screamed against it. Step onto an ancient human warship. Her people had spent centuries erasing humans from existence. If she set foot on this ship, there would be no turning back. She would be seen as a traitor. Then again, hadn't she already made that choice? She exhaled, gripping her controls. All right, Ryder, I'm coming aboard. Her ship detached from its current position, moving toward the Vindicator's docking bay. As she approached, the massive warship's hangar doors, rusted but still functional, began to open. Zyra's heart pounded as she guided her ship inside. She was about to step into a ghost ship of a dead empire, and it was alive once more. The enemy moves. Outside, the Zarkith fleet prepared for annihilation. Admiral Kale, the cold and ruthless commander of the Cleanser fleet, sat rigid in his flagship's command chair, his piercing silver eyes locked onto the U.S. Vindicator. His ship's AI confirmed the status of their attack formation. Target locked. All weapons charged, awaiting orders. Kale exhaled slowly, his voice measured and merciless. Fire at will. Blazing beams of energy surged through the void of space, cutting across the darkness, heading straight for the last human warship. Inside the Vindicator, alarm screamed. Jack Ryder grinned. All right, let's show these bastards how humans fight. The war had begun. The battle begins. The darkness of space erupted in fire. The Zarkith Imperial fleet unleashed a barrage of energy weapons, streaks of crimson light cutting across the void like lightning. The first wave of plasma torpedoes burned through the battlefield, heading straight for the U.S. Vindicator. For the first time in 5 centuries, the last human warship faced an enemy. Inside the Vindicator, Jack Ryder's hands gripped the controls, his pulse steady despite the chaos flashing on his screen. His battle instincts, honed through decades of war, took over as he scanned the incoming threat. 4 battle cruisers, 3 interceptor wings, 1 capital destroyer, and every single one of them was gunning for him. Jack smirked. They don't waste time, do they? Beside him, Captain Syra sat stiffly, struggling to process what was happening. This was her fleet, her people, and now she was inside an ancient human warship, about to fight them. She had spent her whole life believing that humans were extinct, that their war machines were nothing but dust and forgotten history. Now she was in one, and it was about to make history again. She took a deep breath and looked at Jack. If we don't find a way to break through, they will destroy us in minutes. Jack gave a sharp nod. Then let's not give them that chance. Fire and fury. The first wave of plasma torpedoes hit. The U.S. Vindicator's ancient energy shield surged to life, flickering under the sheer force of the blast. The impact rattled the ship, sending tremors through the metal structure. Zyra's hands flew over the control panel, rerouting power to forward shields. Shields at 32%. She called out, "We can't take another hit like that." Jack's fingers moved with practiced precision, scanning the weapon systems. Torpedo launchers, functional, but limited. Pulse cannons, 37% efficiency. Main railgun, offline. He clenched his jaw. They were running at less than half power. Not ideal, but he had fought wars with less. Jack hit the command console. Argus, bring all remaining weapons online. Target their lead cruiser. The AI responded instantly. Weapons charging. Target locked. Jack turned to Syra. Hope you're ready for a history lesson. She arched an eyebrow. And why's that? Jack's grin was sharp. Because I'm about to show you why humanity was feared. With a single press of a button, U.S. Vindicator fired. The first strike. A barrage of pulse cannons tore through space, streaks of blue plasma bolts ripping toward the Lid Zarkith battle cruiser. The enemy ship tried to maneuver, but it was too late. The first pulse impact shredded through its shields. The second shot ripped across its hull, causing explosions to erupt along its surface. Inside the Zarkith fleet's flagship, Admiral Cal's eyes narrowed as warning sirens filled his command bridge. His officer's voice was urgent. "Sir, the human warship is returning fire." Cal barely blinked. Of course it is. Humanity never knew when to die. He turned to his weapons team. "Focus all fire on the Relic. Overload its shields. If we take out its defenses, the fight is over." The entire fleet shifted, forming a tight attack pattern. The next barrage of enemy fire came. Inside the beast, Jack felt the impact slam through the hull. The shields flickered dangerously, alarms blaring in warning. "Shields at 19%, Argus reported. Jack growled. "That's not gonna hold." Zyra's fingers flew across the console. "We need to break formation and get some distance." Jack shook his head. "No. If we run, they'll chase us down. We need to turn the tables." Zyra blinked. "And how do you plan on doing that?" Jack's grin was wicked. "By showing them what human warships were built for." He slammed a control switch. "Argus, initiate tactical mode alpha." The AI's voice shifted, almost amused. "Tactical mode alpha. Engaging." The U.S. Vindicator's thrusters roared to life. For 500 years, the Vindicator had been nothing but a ghost in space, a relic of a long-lost species. Now, it moved like a predator. The massive warship suddenly accelerated, twisting through space at a speed that no ship of its size should have been capable of. The enemy fleet scrambled to adjust. The Vindicator spun, weapons lighting up. But this time, it wasn't firing directly. It was baiting, luring the enemy into a position where Jack wanted them. Zyra watched in awe. "No way. Ships this size aren't supposed to move like this." Jack chuckled, eyes locked on the enemy ships scrambling to follow. "You guys really thought we just built big, slow targets." The Zarkith fleet had expected a relic, a dead warship, limping in battle. What they had found was something far more dangerous. They had found a survivor, and it was angry. The turning point. The enemy commander's voice rang through the fleet. "Do note it is Stieg. All ships, low CK and fire." A dozen energy weapons charged at once, locking onto the Vindicator's position. Jack's heart pounded. This was it. The moment. He waited. 3 seconds. 2. 1. Then, he moved. Jack cut all forward thrusters, letting the ship drift. The enemy ships overshot their target. And that was their last mistake. "Argus, fire everything we've got." A storm of torpedoes and plasma fire erupted from the U.S. Vindicator, slamming into the enemy fleet at point-blank range. The lead Zarkith battlecruiser detonated instantly, breaking apart in a massive explosion. 2 more ships suffered catastrophic damage, their shields buckling. Jack's ship roared forward, breaking through the enemy formation. For the first time, the Zarkith Empire's Cleanser fleet was in retreat, and Captain Zyra. She sat frozen, staring at the battle through the viewport. For years, her people had believed that humans were primitive, weak. Now, she understood the truth. Humanity had not been weak. They had been monsters, and Jack Ryder was the last of them. The aftermath. As the surviving Zarkith ships scrambled away, Jack exhaled, running a hand through his sweat-soaked hair. "Well, that was fun." Zyra turned to him, her voice quiet. "You just defeated an entire fleet with a half-broken warship." Jack's grin was tired, but victorious. "Welcome to humanity, Captain." Zyra's eyes flickered to the burning wreckage outside. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. Humanity's wrath. The battlefield was silent. Where once a Zarkith fleet had stood, ready to erase all traces of humanity, now only burning wreckage remained. Shattered metal drifted through the void, the last remnants of a failed execution. And at the center of it all, The U.S. Vindicator stood victorious. Inside the command bridge, Jack Ryder leaned back in his seat, exhaling slowly as he watched the last enemy ship retreat into the darkness of space. They had won. But war wasn't about one battle. It was about what came next. The fallout. Syra sat in silence, her fingers still gripping the edge of the control panel. She couldn't believe what she had just witnessed. She had spent her life believing that humans were primitive, reckless, and weak, that they had been wiped out because they were inferior. But after watching Jack single-handedly outmaneuver and destroy an entire Zarkith battle fleet with a warship running at half capacity, she finally understood why the Zarkith Empire had been so desperate to erase humanity from history. Because if even one human warship could do this, what would happen if there were more? She turned to Jack, her voice quieter than usual. That fleet wasn't just here to destroy you. They were here to silence history. Jack's eyes remained on the wreckage outside. Yeah, and they failed. Zara exhaled sharply. No, Ryder. They'll come back. And next time, it won't be a small fleet. It'll be the entire Armada. Jack finally turned to look at her, his face unreadable. Then I guess we need a plan. Zara felt her stomach twist. A plan. What did that even mean? He was the last human. His empire was gone. The Zarkith controlled the entire galaxy. There was nothing left to fight for. Was there? The last warship. Jack stood, stretching his sore muscles before walking toward the large viewport. He stared at the U.S. Vindicator's reflection in the void, scared, half-broken, but still standing. Much like himself, his fingers traced the edges of a rusted old insignia on the control panel, the emblem of Terran High Command. The past felt like a distant dream, a war fought by ghosts. And yet here he was, alive. For centuries, humanity's enemies had believed they had won, that the war was over, that the galaxy belonged to them. But war never truly ended. It only waited. And now, with the U.S. Vindicator awake, the waiting was over. Jack's gaze hardened. If the Empire wants to finish what they started, let's give them a real fight. Zara narrowed her eyes. What are you saying? Jack turned to face her fully. I'm saying I'm not going down quietly. Zara crossed her arms. And what exactly do you plan to do? Fly to the Zarkith homeworld with a half-broken ship and an attitude? Jack smirked. Nah. I plan to do something worse. Zara arched an eyebrow. Which is? Jack exhaled and turned back to the console, running his fingers over the ancient tactical command system. His voice was cold. I'm gonna bring humanity back. The legacy of Earth. Delilah stared at him like he was insane. Humanity is gone, Ryder. You're all that's left. Jack didn't argue. Instead, he tapped a few buttons on the console. That's what I thought too. The ship's holographic projector flickered, bringing up a long list of encrypted data logs. Zara frowned. What is that? Jack's expression darkened. Terran Fleet's last orders. Zara's stomach twisted. Wait, are you saying? Jack nodded. Before the final battle, humanity knew they were gonna lose, so they didn't just fight. They scattered. He pulled up a star map, highlighting hundreds of old coordinates across the galaxy. According to this, the Terran High Command sent escape fleets, research teams, and cryopods to deep space locations. Zara's eyes widened. You mean there could be more humans out there? Jack clenched his jaw. Not just humans. He zoomed in on one of the encrypted locations. Weapons, ships, technologies the Empire never found. Zara stepped back. The realization hit her like a shockwave. The Zarkith hadn't just been trying to erase humans. They had been trying to hide the truth. Because if even one of these hidden Terran outposts still existed, the war wasn't over. It had just been waiting for someone to wake it up. The enemy returns. Before Jack could say anything else, the ship's alarm blared again. Zara turned sharply to the console. New energy signatures detected. Jack swore under his breath. They're back already. Zira shook her head, her fingers racing over the scanner. No, this isn't the Empire. Jack frowned. Then whoa. The Vindicator's external cameras focused on the approaching ships. A fleet of unknown vessels emerged from the darkness. Their hulls were old but powerful, painted in faded red and black insignias that Jack recognized immediately. His heart skipped a beat. Zira leaned forward. Who the hell are they? Jack's voice was barely above a whisper. Survivors. The incoming transmission crackled through the comms. A human voice, old, scared, and battle-worn, spoke through the static. U.S. Vindicator. This is Commander Elias Work of the Crimson Remnant. If you're receiving this transmission, then humanity isn't finished yet. Jack grinned. The war had just begun. The legend reborn. The transmission crackled through the U.S. Vindicator's ancient speakers, carrying a voice that shouldn't exist. U.S. Vindicator, this is Commander Elias Work of the Crimson Remnant. If you're receiving this transmission, then humanity isn't finished yet. Jack Ryder's breath caught. He knew that name. Elias Work, a war hero, a legend, a man who should have died 500 years ago along with the rest of humanity. And yet, his voice echoed through the silence of deep space, carrying with it the weight of an entire forgotten legacy. Jack leaned forward, his fingers trembling as he pressed the comms button. Rourke, this is Ryder. Commander Jack Ryder. U.S. Vindicator is online. Repeat, the Vindicator is active. A sharp silence followed. Then, a disbelieving chuckle. Ryder. Rourke's voice was hushed, almost as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. You're alive. Jack exhaled. Looks like it. A long pause. Then, Rourke's voice returned, stronger. By the gods, they finally woke you up. Jack frowned. What do you mean? Rourke sighed. It means, Commander, that you've been asleep while the rest of us have been fighting a war in the shadows. Jack stiffened. Explain. The truth revealed. Rourke's fleet emerged from the darkness, their warships smaller than the U.S. Vindicator, but clearly built for battle. Their hulls were patched together, a mix of old Terran technology and scavenged alien parts. These were not government warships. They were the vessels of survivors. We were never completely wiped out, Rourke explained, his voice carrying the weight of history. After Earth fell, after the last great battle, the remnants of our fleets scattered. Some were hunted down. Some were lost. But a few of us, we disappeared. We rebuilt in the dark. Jack exchanged a look with Zira, who still looked pale from everything that had happened. He turned back to the comms. How many? Rourke sighed. Not enough. Maybe a few thousand of us are left, spread across hidden colonies. We kept moving, always running from the Empire. Always hiding. Jack clenched his jaw. And you never came back for me. Rourke's voice was pained. We tried. The Vindicator was marked as a lost cause. Too deep in enemy space. Too well hidden. The Empire was watching, waiting. If we tried to recover you, we risked exposing everything. Jack ran a hand down his face. 5 centuries. 5 centuries while the last remnants of humanity fought, while he slept in ice. Zira finally spoke, her voice cautious. If you've been in hiding for this long, why reveal yourselves now? Rourke hesitated. Because the moment the Vindicator powered up, the entire Empire knew. That signal you sent, it wasn't just detected by us, it was detected by everyone. Jack's stomach twisted. Zira's eyes widened. You're saying, the Zarkith Empire is coming. The Empire strikes back. Across the vastness of space, the Zarkith Imperial core worlds pulsed with urgency. In a darkened chamber, High Imperator Malthak stood before a massive holographic display, his expression grim. Before him, the full might of the Empire's military hierarchy stood in perfect formation. A young officer bowed before speaking. High Imperator, we have confirmed the worst. The room fell silent. Malthak turned his piercing black eyes to the officer. Speak. The officer swallowed. The human relic, the U.S. Vindicator, has awakened. We lost an entire battle fleet attempting to destroy it. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Imperator's expression darkened. The Vindicator, he repeated slowly. You mean to tell me that the last human warship, the same warship that nearly turned the tide of the war 5 centuries ago, has returned? The officer nodded, his hands trembling. And there's more. Malthak's eyes narrowed. Go on. The officer hesitated before finally speaking. The last Creo soldier is alive. Silence. Pure, absolute silence. Then, boom. The Imperator slammed his fist against the command table, his entire body shaking with rage. Find them. Find DEVI and DICATR and YIP it. From existence, the Empire had ruled for centuries. It had erased humanity. But now, a ghost had returned to haunt them, and the Imperator would make sure that this time there would be no escape. The final stand begins. On the U.S. Vindicator, Jack Ryder stood at the edge of the command bridge, staring into the void. Zyra stood beside him, arms crossed. You realize this means war, don't you? Jack smirked. Was there ever another option? Zyra exhaled, shaking her head. You humans really don't know how to quit. Jack's expression hardened. No, we don't. Behind them, Rourke's fleet hovered, waiting. A tiny spark of a forgotten empire. Jack turned to the comms. Rourke, what's the closest Terran outpost on that star map? Rourke's voice crackled through. There's one. Deep in neutral space. A place we call the Bastion. If there's anything left of the old human fleets, it'll be there. Jack nodded. Then that's where we go. Zyra frowned. And what if we don't find anything? Jack turned to her, his eyes burning with something she had never seen before, pure defiance. Then we keep looking. We find every last survivor, every lost ship, every hidden weapon. And then we make the Empire regret ever thinking they could erase us. Zyra studied him for a long moment. Then, finally, she nodded. Fine. Let's go rebuild your war. Jack grinned. Damn right. He turned to the console, his fingers flying over the ancient controls as he issued the first command of humanity's new war. Argus, set course for Bastion. Maximum speed. The AI's voice hummed to life. Course set. Engaging hyperspace drive. Outside, the U.S. Vindicator rumbled as its engines surged, its ancient systems pushing it forward, toward the unknown, toward the last remnants of a dead empire. But it was no longer just a relic. It was the spark of something greater. As the ship disappeared into hyperspace, a single thought echoed through the galaxy. Humanity was not finished. It was just getting started.